quite a few topics to discuss today, but the backbone of today's discussion will be automation, right? And I know that I'm very enthusiastic about the automation, but at the same time, it's important to be reasonable, right? And realistically estimate your resources, the efforts, the outcome that you're expecting to get, right? But so this is why I just want to start with a like a very general and overarching question here is how to prepare people and processes within the organization for the automation, right? How to set up that proper background just to make sure that we will be doing right things in future, right? And yeah, Daniela, since that was pretty much a topic of your presentation, I would ask you to open this, and then of course it will be very interesting to hear all the experts' opinions.
Thank you, Mike. Very happy to continue this conversation on the panel level, and I think that I believe our participants will hear lots of interesting things here, and of course would like to see lots of questions in the chat. Well, everything starts with the people. I mean, we would like to have some robots within the bank, but even with them, we need very much people around us. And when we are talking about banks, and when I said bank, I always have perspective from my own organization there somewhere. And as I said, we are a retail brick and mortar bank, and dealing with processes at the beginning was something like it's nice to have. That was the first approach. I mean, we will deal with processes when we have time, because we have some more important things to do now. You know, we have some tasks, we have some reports, we have some budgeting, we have some loan approvals, we have something that we don't have time with processes. And then somehow we awake ourselves when we saw that some of our processes, that we lose money somewhere actually, that our clients are not happy with our processes. And something that you mentioned as well, that our employees are not satisfied with our processes. And usually it happens that from sales departments, people start to complain. In our case, it was the fact that, for example, at a certain point of time, we, for example, in 2 years, implemented more than 300 different documents, procedures from ASTE group, from legislative, from EU, and somehow it was a must. Like, you know, you don't want to have gaps on those things. You must be complied. But we didn't have time to ask the question how to implement that. So we just implemented. It was different workarounds, different Excels. So, you know, we are an excellent bank. We are doing everything in Excel. So at a certain point of time, our network said, well, are you aware, for example, I mean, I'm coming from sales, so those are my favorite examples. Are you aware that we need, for example, 3 hours to prepare the most simple unsecured loan? Yeah. Just to gather the paper, not to speak with the client, not to do a proper offer, not to sell, but just to gather the papers and to put that in the core system. We need several hours. I will not speak about housing loans or mortgage loan or something like that. And then you are somehow forced, your board and the management, B-1, you're somehow forced to do something with your processes. And when you, I would say that's as well very important to prepare your organizational structure for your strategy. We all have in strategies, I mean, I speak now about the banks, we all have operational excellence there somewhere. And we would like to have a best operational model to be very effective in our operations. But we must have organizational structure which corresponds with that. That means that somewhere within the bank, you must have a certain B-1 organization which deals with processes and which upgrades your processes. And then when they have a certain KPI, then they're doing with that something. then of course you must build awareness, you must have support from your board, you must include people from your network to participate actively in project management team. So when you prepare all these steps and when you make that kind of beginning awareness, it starts going. But first thing first, I mean, you must prepare somehow people in order not to have a failure on the first process that you want to, for example, put on DMS or on the RPA. And maybe one more example, we did something with artificial intelligence in our bank. And we were, I mean, sales departments were not so fast to do that. We were overwhelmed with some other processes. But for example, our payment processing department, they did a great project on artificial intelligence, and they are now very, very happy with that. And now they are very much volunteering in those processes. So their employees, when they saw the concrete benefits, now you don't need to push them to do something. We have a pull strategy, like they're actually now pushing us from the management to do the next project. And then it goes much and much faster and better, and with far more success.
That's clear. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So the strong leadership and understanding of what needs to be done, and then, starting with something small, but which can bring a lot of benefits to the business right there on the way, is important. Just with your example of the simple process that took so much time. And I bet after the automation, the productivity improved significantly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
Yes, indeed. If I may add, Mike,
please,
on that, as we all know and we all use this phrase, time is money. I think automation is all about getting the proper service out there, getting the proper customer satisfaction, reducing the time to market. Either it's a new product, either it's a service, either it's a settlement file that we need to process, either it's a payment file, either it's a transfer. Any of these, if we want to achieve a particular time frame and we want to reduce that and be as quick as possible, we have to have automation. I remember maybe 20 years ago, we used to process the settlement files among the banks manually via manual process and manual transfers. Now we use crons and we use automation. The data lineage is different, and the basic foundation of any process, it's the time to market and the time that we improve in order to provide a quality service or a product, either internally, either externally towards the customers.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so if I may add, Mike, as well.
Please.
So I think it's also important, like I think the colleagues already said a lot of things, but let me maybe rephrase it or summarize it like this. Like, it's important to identify areas that can benefit from automation, like determine which processes and tasks can be automated, whether are those quick wins which can be done within the one department, or we need multiple departments that will be much harder to implement. And for example, if you have certain reports which are distributed each month, as Daniela mentioned in her presentation, you can benefit with automating that. So it's really important to just put on paper everything that we do and which can benefit actually from automation. Not everything can have benefit with the automation. And the second point which I want to say, and I think all the colleagues also mentioned it, is communication with employees. I think that's the very important part of the automation process. It's important that colleagues know that real reasons for the automation, how will it affect their jobs, and maybe some new skills that they will have to learn because they will start working on something else which isn't actually the job that they did so far. So that's it, basically. Most of the other things colleagues already mentioned.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I also think that makes a lot of sense. So prioritize things properly and then think about the adoption and maybe build the adoption strategy where you have to maybe start with teasing and telling your employees that something big is coming, right? And then unveiling, parts of this gradually, and then keeping the power users, I mean, the people from that area involved into the development. So just to make sure that it will be relevant for them. And they can actually be partners who communicate things both ways, right? Collecting the feedback from the business users, and after kind of digesting and transforming this within the technical team, giving it back to those end users, saying, hey, you were complaining about that, or you were talking about these things which caused some issues, and now we worked on this, and this is what you will be getting very soon. So get ready for that. Soon that will be released, and that kind of drives it within the organization and creates the right expectations. Yeah, absolutely agree. And I've seen those approaches, working and proving themselves as very effective on the organizational level. Okay, that actually brings us gradually to another topic which I wanted to touch here, right? So we are very eager when we're talking about automation. Clearly, there are a lot of benefits of it, but what are the potential challenges or pitfalls that organizations can kind of face or encounter on this path, right? So you have to be reasonable and you have to be prepared, right? And this is what provokes that question, because obviously, especially on the leadership level, there is a risk evaluation, right? And choosing the right moment to go into this, right? So what would be the cautions and like the issues that's worth mentioning and talking about?
Okay, so maybe I can start.
Yeah, please continue.
It's really connected with the previous statement that I did. So I think the first mention here is resistance to the change. Mm-hmm. Employees will probably resist to the change that automation brings. It's not only that. We as a people are like that. We don't like changes. We are used to some things, some processes, and I think this is very big issue when we talk about the automation, resistance to change from the employees actually. The second point which I want to address is already what you said, Mike. It's these legacy systems which most of the companies, not just banks, but I think most of the bigger companies have these legacy systems which is a little bit trickier to integrate all these automations, all these tools with those legacy systems. And then, of course, there's this side of costs, which Daniela also mentioned, like this cost-to-income ratio. Automation can be really expensive if we are talking about RPA, and solution can be really expensive. I believe it's paid by a license, and these licenses can be very expensive. So it's very important if we decide to go in this process of automation, we need to make a certain assessment or to see the cost benefit, actually to see the benefit of that automation. And from my point of view, maybe major thing, when I say my point of view from the risk side, is regulator or the regulations. So all these automations, everything that is done within the banks, especially risk department, is pretty much regulated by the local regulators, group regulators. Right. And definitely that is something that has to be taken into account.
Of course. Yeah, thank you for that.
If I may add on that, and it's a very good point. The national authorities, the regulators, may add additional challenges on what we're trying to do and what we're trying to automate. And especially when we have a long-running project. Because when we have a long-running project like 1.5 years, 2 years, 5 years, we know the strategy, we know where we need to go, we know what we want to automate, and we know what we want to come out with as a result. But meanwhile, the foundation changes because the regulator says, now you need to do, I don't know, daily reporting on various new customers or daily DPDs or that are being transferred to national authorities, or maybe we need to change how we look at the PDs, the probability of defaults, or maybe different factors or variations. From my perspective, the one of the challenges that we came across when building automation, and I'm not referring necessarily to high-level automation like RPA, robot process automation, or no code, because these are also automations, but are high-level automations. I'm referring to low-level automation, like the automating of data transfers among the systems in order to have centralized information to be spread for self-servicing. You're saying, Hanan, regarding automating a report. My vision is not to automate the report, but my vision is to make the data readily available for you to consume however you would want it. So would be not an effort to schedule the report, but you will have access to it. You could self-service, you could deep dive. If you want to add another dimension on which to filter out the potential customers that may be at high risk or lower risk for you, you could do that by yourselves. And when you're conducting such a long-running project, like automating any source of data within an organization, as we all know, banks are huge organizations, when the regulator comes, then they add an extra challenge on that because the teams are already involved and we have some slightly moving target towards we need to work faster and harder in order to achieve it in the initial planned scope, budget, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you for that. Oh, of course, those things cannot be neglected. Daniela, do you want to add something to this?
Just shortly, I mean, colleagues mentioned lots of important things concerning the challenges, but I will just come back again to our examples. I mean, for my organization, we are, again, pioneers in the automation. And I believe that when you start something in the bank, don't try to be big bank, because banks are very sensitive to that. Mm-hmm. So try to do processes which are, as I said, ready, not complicated. I completely agree with everything that Tudor and Kenan said. For example, at a certain point of time when we tried to candidate processes for automation, we have a big problems with reading of reports from a land registry in Montenegro. And it's very time consuming. And we believe that it can be put on one part on DMS and the other part can be automated. But at the end, we realized that we cannot rely on web services on the side of the land registry office because they are not always up to date. They have some problems. And it was luck that we didn't start with that process. We recognized that at the beginning. And then we realized that it's better to start with some more simple processes, with minor processes, and to do that small improvements in order to prepare the bank for maybe one big bang at a certain point of time when we are ready. So it's very important when we said, yes, we are doing RPA, we are doing automation. Don't start with big bang because banks are not organizations which are very comfortable with huge level of risks concentrated on certain projects. So I would suggest something like that. Try and choose clever. And maybe another point, in our case, we always had a problem with resources on IT side, but those automations, which are like simple ones, we did with internal resources. So with people from our organizations who know our processes. And we already recognize that for big bank, in terms of one very great achievement, we will need external vendor, definitely. But from our side, we will have experienced people who will be part of the project management team. So that will be maybe an example from the concrete case.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the practical examples. And thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think all of this is very relevant for the audience that we're having here today, right? Because it kind of gives the expert view and the real-time, real-life examples of what should be considered during the those big transformation initiatives on the organizational level. But there's one topic that's been on the table for quite a while. It's quite sensitive, I would say, right? And this is why I think it's worth stressing it today during our discussion as well. And it's like the ethical considerations of automation of financial decision making, meaning that there is a certain portion of human involvement and the manpower which is involved in the decision making, and then the outcome of the decision making for the end users, right? So it affects the customer experience, the decisions that we make, the retention, and so on and so forth, but also people who are actually participating in the process of it, right? So were you thinking about this? And if not, what are your thoughts on this topic? Because as I said, it has appeared and it's been discussed quite actively, the last days. So Daniela, do you want to continue? So.
Just to unmute myself, yes. Well, I've just started. Maybe colleagues can of course interrupt me. When we're speaking about data and usage of data, I mean, we always must consider and be very careful with the sources of those data, and do we have consent of our clients? Do we have a clear purposes? Are we GDPR compliant? I mean, the story of the GDPR is actually something we just started in Montenegro, and actually still is not in the whole scope adopted. But if we just speak here about automation, from the perspective of the employees and from the perspective of our clients, if it's used properly, it is 100% ethical. I mean, if your goal is to improve and to make easier life of your employees and to prepare them for more complex tasks, to free up their time to work on their education, to upgrade themselves, then it's very ethical in terms of relationship between employer and employee. And on the other side, if you're doing something which will positively impact your customers, then 100% it's ethical. Of course, you must be very transparent in usage of customers' data, and it's not something which is connected just with the automation. It's something which is a standard of banking business. So be transparent and just give your clients a possibility to say, I wouldn't like for my personal data to be processed at certain level. I mean, just a minimum or for certain purposes. So I would say that idea, if it's within the strategy properly implemented, it's very ethical and should be implemented as let's say crucial pillar in order to make a working environment more human for employees, and of course to contribute to client experience as much as possible.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Kenan, do you have something to add, maybe from the risk standpoint, and since you've been deeply involved into this topic?
Yes, definitely. What first thing that comes to my mind is transparency. So these automated system must be transparent and explainable, so that all these decisions that we do, that we make, can be audited, whether by internal audit or local regulator or whoever, external auditor, whoever. So we need to make this a very transparent approach, and definitely that's something that has to be done. Second point, which I would like to say, is human oversight. So there has to be someone, department person, who is responsible, who will be designated to check that these automated systems or processes and decisions coming from that are reviewed and corrected if needed. And maybe definitely when we talk about the errors that can come up with this automated financial decision making, we need to ensure that we detect and correct errors appropriately in the course of this automation process. So those are the main principles which I would like to point out when we are talking about the ethical considerations, transparency, human oversight, and also checking the errors and making sure that we learn on those mistakes and correct them in the future.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. Tudor.
Yeah, I agree with what Daniela and Kenan said. And I think in the banking industry, as it is a highly regulated industry, everything is conducted ethically from all the perspectives. We are GDPR compliant, we are aware of PII data, we are aware of any implications that may have if we trigger a flag on a particular customer that the customer may be having a debt that is not being repaid, or as a being with a certain delay in repayments or in installments or in equity or whatever. From my perspective, as Kenan said, the process, once it's being analyzed, the process also needs to keep a certain percentage of human intervention in it, or at least of human observation of spread, maybe in 6 months, 12 months, or maybe longer, to analyze and to see if the process backfires or misfires in any way, because there are very high implications in the financial industries. But we all rely on these processes, and the processes automation started tens of years ago, where, as I told you, we're back in the days where processing settlement files by manually. Now we're using machines, we're using cron, we're using very powerful systems. And regarding automation, of course, it is ethically. You can have a very easy example, maybe optical character recognition, OCR. From my perspective, anything that has to do with this OCR process and automating a process that reads automatically the papers of the customers, or what we receive via emails, or what we have as scans, it helps the bank making the process leaner, making the process faster, and it has a very low error rate. I think the OCR processes right now have, I don't know, less than 3% errors in what they do, and that helps in getting products faster to the customer. If the customer says, I'll apply for a loan and I want a mortgage loan, and here are the evaluation of my collateral, I'm sending you via email. We could process very fast the email document. We could extract the relevant information from the document, like the value of the property. We could add the internal haircut on top of that. Hanan, you're familiar with the risk methodologies on that. And we can provide the faster answer to the customer. So from my perspective, automation, because banking at least is very highly regulated industry, and we have a lot of authorities that are checking and cross-checking, and we're also taking care that all the processes are in place. I think it's ethically used from any point of view. And also I'm curious to see how ChatGPT will going to impact the industry. Maybe I don't know, from call center perspective or from customer education in finance and in other industries. But I'm sure that these new technology that appear right now are going to be regulated and are going to be used in the near future also in banking industries.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think that's also very exciting to kind of look after some emerging technology these days and how they are going to transform the industry, right? And this is why we are so excited about no code as well. All right, I think there was one more question. Conscious of time, Pete, I hope we have a little bit more time to talk about one important thing, also related to automation. It's like internal versus external automation, right? So there are different types of processes, a variety of them, and variety of areas where it can, impact the business in one way or another, right? So when we are talking internal processes, clearly there is also a huge demand for automation, but then there is like external processes which are related to our customers, right? Customer facing and so on and so forth, which are on the forefront of the business, right? So how to prioritize, how to kind of differentiate, and does it really make any difference, right? So really interesting to hear the expert's opinion on this topic. So Daniela, maybe you can just kick it in.
There was one short slide on my presentation. I mean, you must have some kind of criteria predefined when you are categorizing your processes and deciding what to do with them. When people feel that they have direct benefits from this kind of story, and we are now in that case, then we have another problem, not how to motivate them, but how to explain them that we cannot automate everything in this year. I mean, I'm now speaking of those hundreds of small processes when now they see that they have direct benefits from that in terms that you will free up, for example, half an hour or 45 minutes every day to one employee on some kind of very boring report, which can be easily automated. And then we stuck to that transparency in governance of processes, which is as well very important because of some kind of internal organizational culture. And we set up a kind of criteria which are directly connected with our strategy on one part, and on the other part with the operational efficiency, with the volume of the process, and with the FTs that we spend there in general. And of course, we always put there something which is connected with compliance and the implementation of something that is a must-have. And then we just put like criteria from, I don't know, 1 to 5 and explain which of these criteria applied to which process in which degree, and that kind we are adopting some kind of a score to each process. What importance and what strategy importance we can connect with that process. And then we have some kind of mutual understanding and support within departments, how to categorize and what will be our priorities in implementation. And maybe just one additional comment on something that we previously actually finished with. Yes, I would agree that automated processes must be governed and must be somehow controlled. We had an example of pre-approved loans, for example, within the group, and that process contained lots of automation on the side of the risk knockout criteria, on the side of publishing of that on different channels, on branch channel, on call center channel, on banking channel. And experience was that you must somehow cut that process to have a certain stages where you will make some controls. So when you finish with the processing of data from your data warehouse, and then you apply all the risk criteria, someone from your strategy department or risk department must check that. I mean, just quickly to see what's going on there. And then you continue with the process. Because some processes which are automated, I mean, you always have some kind of risks there, particularly if they are subject to client experience, or even if they're strongly regulated, like they are under the central bank regulations or some other. So even if it's automated, be careful and make some control points somewhere. So it was actually the comment and example on the previous topic.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So Canon, do you want to continue?
Yes. Okay. So this is a really tough question. On the one side, you have customers, which basically the bank is working for the customers, and on the other side, you have back offices on which we can significantly improve or reduce costs and possibility of errors or something like that. So when we talk about what will have higher priority, it's very hard to say. So I think that there has to be some two streams, like one working for clients, like lending stream, and the other back office stream.
All right.
So when we talk about the return to investment or return on investment, I think that back office can greatly benefit for the banks, because with this process, with automation, we can improve efficiency, reduce costs, eliminate a lot of errors that are manually now maybe happen in the back office. So from that side of story, I think this will be a great benefit for the banks. And from the other side, for the clients, they will have their interaction with the bank will be much better, because they will have better service. Maybe some errors that are found, it will create like improved efficiency towards clients and reduce possibility of errors that have been identified in the past. So basically, that's it on this topic from my side.
Can I pop up, Kevin?
Please.
Well, we have a very interesting discussion with one of my very experienced colleagues from the back office, who actually B-1 for same department. And there is no like opposite direction of the back office interests and client interests. And if you try to, client stream or sales stream, if you succeed to optimize something in the back offices at certain point, that definitely would be a benefit for the client.
Yes.
At least you will
free
indirectly. Yeah. At least you will free up some resources from some other things, and they will be quicker and better to support sales in some other tasks. So yes, within the sales department, we are sometimes too much client oriented, and maybe we do not see that some back office processes are as well in our interests to be automated and to be faster, in order to free up some people there to work something which is more complex and maybe more important for us. So yes, of course, I strongly support for back office processes to be sometimes even of a bigger priority than direct sales channels.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful example. Yeah, streamlining the process makes sense. Tudor, would you like to contribute from your side as well?
Yes, if I may, I would add on the same topic that Daniela, on the same line that Daniela started. From my perspective, not necessarily once you look at the process, not necessarily you look for the processes that can have the higher cost associated. From my perspective, is the process needs to be analyzed from several dimensions. Is it a regulatory process that needs to be automated? Is it something that impacts the productivity? Is it something that impacts the business plan? And several other dimensions. You don't necessarily have to look at a process that at the end of the day, if you automated it, you would free up some FTEs. Because the FTEs, at the end of the day, you'll just be reusing them, because the activities will get, from my perspective, more complex, and over time, it will have to involve, we will have to involve as various organizations, more or less the same baseline of employees, but in much more complex processes, because the regulators come with new challenges, the market comes with new challenges, the demand for a product that is being released faster, sooner, better, more pink or beautiful product than the previous one, and all these challenges add up. I agree. The automation of processes can improve the productivity, regardless if it's back end or back office or automated or I don't know, optical character recognition, OCR, or maybe an RPA that introduces from the OCR that was just read by the printer, introduces the customer data into the CRM, or maybe the CRM back in the back triggers a risk management process that automates an AML, maybe an anti-money laundering check to see if the customer is on the blacklist. Or maybe if the customer is not on the blacklist and the customer has a longer relations with the bank, and the customer had applied previously to a loan that was declined due to various conditions, and the conditions change, maybe it triggers a call center lead, and all these relate, and all this can be automated, and not necessarily FTE cut down, but making the process streamer, looking towards the market to see what we can offer there, faster, better, or maybe compliant with a new regulation, or maybe, I don't know, working as a total industry connected and serving the customer as a marketplace. Normal.
Yeah.
This is my perspective on automated processes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Tudor, Daniela, Kenan. I think we are at the end of the discussion for today, and I really appreciate you kind of sharing your expertise here and giving these insights, which hopefully will encourage people from our audience today to kind of drive these transformational initiatives and automation within their organization.